on their income tax statement as a benefit. Because unless you're a lighthouse tender, right, there's only a few jobs where your housing is considered tax exempt, where you have to live in that location in order to provide a service to the government, like a lighthouse tender. Got to live in the lighthouse, sorry. Okay, so it's free. So what we found is that our own employees in the state of California were underpaying $3 million a year in taxes that they should have been paying on fringe benefits, and they were getting about $8 million a year in free rent. And so I proposed a bill that said, you can't do this anymore. That if you're going to have free housing, you either have to pay market rate, or if the government provides it to you, it's got to be reported, you've got to pay taxes on it. Now, interestingly enough, some unions are trying to repeal my law right now because it's becoming effective. And we were able to get it passed. It's a small example, but you know, I worked very hard with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to try to explain that this wasn't fair and that their own constituents would not like it when they heard about it. And so we worked hard and we got it passed. Another example where I worked with a very local member to get something passed. And some of you may or may not agree with this, but how many of you know that our prison system in California has among the highest recidivism rates in the country, meaning that our prisoners reoffend at a high rate and go right back to prison? And how many of you know that the worst portion of our prison system for recidivism, compared to the national average, is with prisoners that were drug and alcohol related? So in other words, maybe they committed a robbery while under the influence, and so that contributed to their crime. And now we're sending them to prison, and we're not doing anything to break them of that underlying habit that contributed to their causing a crime. So by doing this, what are we doing? First of all, we're causing all of you, the taxpayers, extra free crime. Secondly, those inmates are hurting often themselves, their family members, or other people when they commit their crimes, are they not? And lastly, they're not being productive taxpayers. So that's a triple whammy. And so I looked at this, and I thought, I was on the subcommittee that had the prison budget. I did that for 4 years. And I went to Mervyn Dimely, who was actually lieutenant governor when Ronald Reagan was governor. That's how long he's been around politics. 83 or 84 years old now. He was the head of the Black Caucus in the state assembly. So I went to Mervyn Dimely and I said, will you work with me to try to fix this problem in our prison system? And he said yes. And so we created the Devore bill that sought specifically to add 4,000 prison beds specifically for drug and alcohol rehab to address the problem using modern tested techniques and try to break our prisoners of their habits so that they could try to become model citizens, or at least law-abiding citizens, when they got out. And that bill was rolled into the Prison Reform Bill, AB 900, and passed into law. Now, you might think, well, that's not really a conservative or a liberal idea. I think it's good governance, but we got it passed. And so there's a couple of examples of doing something that I would submit that in the current environment, respectfully, I would submit we need less doing and more adherence to the Constitution, because I think that's where we've gotten a lot of our problems right now. First of all, we've got a lot of questions here, sir.
I'm not suggesting that you go outside the Constitution, but in your position, you can be a conduit for massive amounts of information that we don't have access to. It's not classified. That by getting that stuff out to the public can then, but that's not happening.
All right. Well, I think with the internet tools that we have now, there's a lot of information out there at our disposal. And I would just recommend getting involved in groups that are going to share it with you, whether it's iCaucus or Americans for Limited Government or Americans for Tax Reform. There's more information, I think, than we have, than we know what to do with right now. My concern is that we send too many people to Washington, D.C. and to Sacramento, especially from our side of the aisle, who frankly have no clue what they're going to do when they get there. They make it up as they go along because they don't have a core philosophy that guides their decisions. I have a core the Constitution, it's the preamble of the Declaration, it's liberty. And I don't vary from that. So I'm not a big fan of pragmatic temporizing, as it were. Sir?
Would you get behind auditing the feds?
I have supported the audit of the Fed. I signed up to support the audit of the Fed bill at least 9-10 months ago, before it was really popular. So, yes, sir. Let's go further in the back. In the back stripe shirt.
I wanted to ask you, every time I get around, get close to the political action going on, I see people running in this direction with their special interest and people going in this direction with their special interest, and they never give a thought. Really, they just take off. They never give a thought as to what the function of government should be. And I wanted to ask you,
Yes.
if you could say it in a few words,
Yes.
what's the proper function, the proper function?
The proper function of government, I alluded to in my opening remarks. The proper function of government is to secure our God-given rights. Not to make up new rights, not to try to give you or equalize the playing field between you and someone else. It's to secure your God-given rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now this is extremely important to understand the distinction between the mindset of most of the people in this room and the mindset of the people that we often find ourselves in opposition to. All right? Mm-hmm. The one mindset found, I think, its pinnacle expression in the founding of America. The other mindset began with the establishment of the French Republic in the revolution that happened in France shortly after our revolution. And what you see in the divergence of those two revolutions is very stark. Look at how bloody the French Revolution was. Look at all the turmoil that arose out of that. Look at the dictatorship of Napoleon. And the reason why that grew out of the French Revolution is they did not believe in the dignity of man as a creature of God. You see, if you think that we are a reflection of God, and as such that we have inherent dignity in each one of us, you have a very different conception of government and its role. To preserve the weak against the strong, to keep order. If, however, that you believe that the role of government is determined by a majority, simple majority, then you can believe in a government that came to power in the Weimar Republic in Germany that led through legal elections, through a chain of events, to Adolf Hitler being Führer.
Right.
Because that system that led to his governance was all done, presumably, within the law. And yet it was utterly immoral at its core, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Now, this question about whether or not rights are immutable and an inherent part of our dignity versus simple majoritarian rule, this question was at the heart of the creation of the Republican Party in the 1850s. Because the question back then, as you saw with the Lincoln-Douglas debates, was whether or not slavery was immoral and should be stopped from spreading to the territories, or whether it should be determined by a simple vote of the majority in the territory, which was the position of the Whigs and of Stephen Douglas on the Democrat side. And as we saw, the Whigs disappeared in about 5 years. And there are those within the Republican Party today that will tell you that the party should only focus on economic issues to the exclusion of everything else. Now, I don't disagree that that's where America's at right now. But I strenuously disagree with the proposition that the Republican Party needs to lose its soul in order to attract votes.